welcome to everyone to this seminar or webinar that's part of the Build America Center's Modernizing Infrastructure series. I'm Mike Garvin. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech, and I'm one of the regional directors of the Build America Center. And I'm very pleased that you've chosen to join us today for what I expect is going to be a really interesting webinar where we're pleased to have with us different members of the Purple Line team. We've got Doran Basso, who's the CEO of Purple Line Transit Partners, Ray Biggs, who's the MTA Senior Project Manager for the Purple Line, and then Hugo Fonteroig. I may not have pronounced that properly, but Hugo is the project executive for Maryland Transit Solutions, and they're going to give us their perspective of sort of the past, the present, and the future of the Purple Line. So again, very pleased to have them with us today. And so, Ray, I'll turn it over to you to get things started.
All right, thank you for that, Mike. We are excited to be here today. As Mike mentioned, we are in such a good place right now with the Purple Line with all the progress we've made. And just want to orient us a little bit for everybody. So the Purple Line goes from Prince George's to Montgomery County. It is a Maryland Transit Administration project, but because we're so close to Washington, D.C., sometimes we get confused with the WMATA metro system, but it is completely separate, though we do tie into the metro system. I'll talk about that, and we'll talk about that throughout the presentation to talk about the nuances there. But just wanted to orient you a little bit, given we're in Maryland, but we're like 10 minutes from the DC line. So with that, we'll just jump right into it. Hopefully you can see everything, and I'll jump right to moving us right through the presentation. All right, so one thing I wanted to stress and really talk about is how the Purple Line really became only possible through our partnerships. As Mike mentioned, we have three partners here. We have the Maryland Transit Administration, we have who is the owner, the concessionaire, Purple Line Transit Partners, and then the Design-Build Purple Maryland Transit Solutions. Then we also have Purple Line Transit operators who will operate the system for us during that 30-year period. So we'll talk through how the partnership has really been part of the past, present, and future to getting us where we are, focusing on the project overview, then emerging from the past, then the present day project and the future of the Purple Line. Just wanted to reiterate who is with me again today. I know Mike introduced them, but just want to introduce the partners again. Doran Basso, the Chief Executive Officer for our concessionaire, Purple Line Transit Partners. And then Hugo Fonteroig, our Project Executive for Maryland Transit Solutions, who is our design builder for the Purple Line. All right, so I'll jump right into the overview of the project and give a little bit about what the project is itself. So the Purple Line spans 16 miles and features 21 stations, creating a seamless transit link between key destinations. With a fleet of 28 light rail vehicles, it provides frequent and reliable service, running on dedicated lanes and a mix of shared, exclusive, and grade separated environments. Trains will arrive around 7.5 minutes during peak hours and every 10 to 12 minutes off peak, making commuting more predictable for our riders of the Purple Line. By eliminating redundant bus routes and optimizing the transit connections, the Purple Line makes our public transportation system more efficient in the area. An end-to-end travel time of just 63 minutes, that's from Bethesda all the way to New Carrollton, means quicker and more convenient journeys for residents and visitors alike. It's also backed by a 30-year operations and maintenance plan, and this system is built for long-term sustainability and reliability. So now let's talk about travel within the corridor itself. So by building the Purple Line, we aim to ensure faster commutes, as I mentioned, and easier access. But this initiative isn't just about the corridor, it's about the surrounding communities as well. Connecting communities is our tagline for the Purple Line. Strengthening the local connectivity helps adjacent neighborhoods thrive and ensures equitable access to mobility solutions. For those that will travel beyond the corridor, we are implementing improvements that provide connections to the regional destinations, as I mentioned in the beginning, through transit expansion. And the goal is to make the travel simpler and more efficient. Additionally, one of our core focus areas is the optimization of passenger distribution via Metro Rail and the MARC train. So by refining these systems, we can better connect riders to radio corridors and ensure smoother transit experiences, particularly for those traveling to Washington, D.C. So finally, we also address travel access into the corridor, improving routes from northern and eastern regions, especially along major arterial roads and metro rail lines, that's the WMATA lines, that will expand accessibility and foster a more integrated transportation network for Maryland and within the DC area. So now let's take a look at what this really means with all the transit connections here. You can see the map of the Purple Line there on your left, and then you can see how the Purple Line ties in with the WMATA system, and then some of the local routes that are within the area of the alignment. So right now, our transportation infrastructure is primarily radial, as I was describing, focused on moving people in and out of the city rather than across the corridor. While heavy transit usage exists on Metro Rail and bus networks, the continuous major east-west arterials are limited. There are about 75 bus routes in the corridor, but only 12 serve east-west trips, even though some of these are the most busiest in the entire system. And currently, no single seat ride covers the length of the corridor, forcing commuters to make multiple transfers to get from one end to the next. So the Purple Line would directly connect key activity centers, including Bethesda, as you can see here, Silver Spring, Tacoma Langley Park, College Park, New Carrollton, reducing those travel times. The light rail will seamlessly integrate with the existing transit infrastructure, connecting with the red, green, and orange Metro Rail lines for the WMATA system, as well as the MARC and Amtrak at New Carrollton and College Park. The project isn't just about rail, as I mentioned, it's about enhancing the overall transit options. And the Purple Line will work alongside existing providers such as Ride On, as you can see here in Montgomery County, the bus in Prince George's County, the WMATA system itself, and the University of Maryland Shuttle, complementing their services and expanding transit for those who rely on public transportation every day. So here are some key facts about the Purple Line itself. It's a massive project, as you can see. It features about 32 miles of new track across that 16-mile alignment, improving the transit connectivity. It's 23 miles of upgraded drainage, will enhance infrastructure. 18 miles of relocated water, sewer, and gas lines will modernize the utilities in the area. More than 10 miles of new bike lanes and trails will promote cycling and pedestrian access. And we have over 17 miles of sidewalk we've also constructed as part of the Purple Line. 26 newly constructed bridges will facilitate safe and efficient transportation. And then one of the biggest things is more than 250 walls will be built, reinforcing the structural integrity and the landscape of the design across the alignment. So now let's take a look at our light rails. So the Purple Line light rail vehicles stretch an impressive 142 feet, providing plenty of room for our passengers. As you can see, it's a 5-segment articulating vehicle, which is quiet. We get that question a lot. Is it quiet? It is very quiet. And it will be able to carry more than 400 people, particularly 432 people at total capacity with 80 seats on each of those vehicles. And also, there are 8 wheelchairs that can get onto the vehicle, and also 8 bicycles that could be loaded onto the vehicle as it's traveling. The other part of the vehicle that is also impressive is about the low floor boarding that will allow for passengers to easily board the trains with the wide doorways for easy boarding through all 5 segments of the vehicle. So now let's jump into what this P3 structure really is. So the project organizational structure showing Maryland Transit Solutions in the Design-Build Contractor box below, as I mentioned at the beginning, includes me, who work for the Maryland Transit Administration, which is part of the Maryland Department of Transportation, and the team there that is part of the owner of the Purple Line. We have a contract with the Purple Line Transit Partners. That is our concessionaire. You'll hear us say concessionaire and owner and design builder, who is Maryland Transit Solutions, who has a contract with Purple Line Transit Partners. They also have CAF and Atkins who work for them. And then additionally, you heard me mention Purple Line Transit operators earlier. They will operate the system for us once we get into operation on behalf of the Maryland Transit Administration for 30 years. So how did we get to where we are? So now we'll talk about how the Purple Line has emerged from the past. Now I'll give a little bit of history about the Purple Line, which has been going on for quite some time. So in the 1970s, as the Bethesda Chevy Chase master plan took shape, planners saw potential in a declining freight line between Bethesda and Silver Spring. It was designated for future transit, setting the stage for decades of development. So fast forward to 1984, 14 years later, when the Metro Rail Red Line, that's part of the WMATA system, brought Bethesda Station to life. But it's more than just an architectural beauty. It was built with the anticipation of a future transit connection. Then you move forward to in 1988, Montgomery County seized the moment, acquiring the now abandoned freight line right away, and the vision for expanded transit was growing stronger. Then in 1993, the Maryland's Department of Transportation launched the Capital Beltway Corridor Transportation Study. The study recognized a pressing need, mass transit alternatives to ease the Beltway congestion. If you live in this area, 495, it can take quite some time to get from Bethesda to New Carrollton or vice versa, depending on the time of day. There's back-to-back traffic. Then by 2001, the vision was no longer just a concept. The Maryland's governor officially endorsed the Inner Purple Line at the time, that's what it was called, a light rail system connecting Bethesda to New Carrollton, a major step forward in the regional transportation. So if we keep going forward, in 2002, the name Purple Line, as you hear us saying today, was officially adopted, establishing its identity and setting the foundation for the future of this transportation initiative. By 2009, after an extensive environmental review, assessing multiple options, the decision was made that the Purple Line would be a medium investment light rail alternative, a choice that would shape the future of the local transit in the area. So fast forward to just 12 years ago to 2013, the final environmental impact statement was released, projecting that it would serve over 74,000 riders daily by 2040, reinforcing the potential to transform the region's public transportation network. Then came 2014, a milestone moment where the Federal Transit Administration recognized the Purple Line as one of just 7 New Start projects nationwide as part of the Capital Investment Grant Program. It received $100 million in federal funding as a down payment, cementing its place as a priority for future transit investments in the area. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Doran to talk a little bit more about the P3 delivery approach and what that all means there for the Purple Line.
Thanks, Ray. Well, as Ray mentioned, the the P3 delivery approach. This is has the private partner, the concessionaire, responsible for design, build, finance, operating, and maintaining the line. So if we dive in a little more in the design and construction period, it was originally envisioned to be 6 years, with the concessionaire responsible for permitting, design, all the construction, quality assurance, quality control, and as I mentioned, financing the project. The owner did still have some responsibilities, of course, in addition to being a partner and the procuring authority. They were leading right-of-way acquisition, public outreach, and quality assurance oversight, making sure that that quality process was delivering as it should. Into the 30-year O&M period, the concessionaire was responsible for all operations of the train, maintenance of the train and the tracks, capital improvements, maintaining the vehicles, and as with most of these P3 projects, there was strict requirements for handback for how the asset looked and must perform and how much life must be remaining at the end of the 30-year operations term. The owner would be responsible for the fare policy, fare revenue, service and ridership, also electricity costs and policing the line. So like many of these transit projects, it's availability payment based, where the concessionaire is compensated for maintaining the service while the owner takes whatever fare revenue that is generated by the facility. So if we go to the next slide, we'll pick up sort of where Ray left off there with the history, with the record of decision in place and the FEIS and some federal funding. Then MDOT was able to kick off a procurement in 2014. MTA issued requests for proposals for the project, which eventually Purple Line Transit Partners was selected as the concessionaire and achieved financial close in June of 2016. So for those first few years, the project was in the design and construction phase, and there was a lot of progress. Most of the design was completed in those first several years. Utility relocations commenced. Some bridges were started. Some bridges were finished and open to the public. The light rail vehicle production began. The O&M, the operations and maintenance facility and headquarters building started to take shape. And the first few hundred feet of track were laid as well there between 2016 and 2020. But during this time, there were also some challenges and disputes and alleged delays. And that ultimately led to the design-build contractor leaving the project, which obviously was quite dramatic and difficult for the project. But through this challenge came an opportunity. The owner and the concessionaire doubled down on our partnership. We realized that we did still share the same goal of bringing the Purple Line to the people of Maryland as soon as possible, given the circumstances. So we preserved that P3 structure, but we were missing a really key ingredient, and that was a design-build contractor. So it's not quite on this chart, but on 2021, we started a procurement. But before we leave this page, I wanted to note that as the original design-build contractor left in 2020, we organized an orderly handover of the construction site and also all the subcontracts to the owner, the state of Maryland. So the owner took assignment of all the subcontracts and kept strategic pieces of the construction work moving during this time. And we'll talk a little bit more on the next slides on how important this was for the project. So now we need to find a new design-build contractor. Just at a high level, the roles and responsibilities here. The concessionaire and MTA remained very close partners. Again, if anything, it strengthened our partnership and made us realize how well aligned we were. The concessionaire, we kind of took the lead on garnering industry interest. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. We led the procurement, but of course, everything we did was in close coordination with MDOT MTA. They really, as the owner, set the rules of the road, the expectations, the priorities, and the boundaries. But we had to collaborate closely together to issue documents, discuss and resolve issues. And this is where really we took our communication and coordination just to a new level as partners. So let's talk about that procurement effort a little bit. Risk is key to any contract, any construction contract, but particularly with P3s, which tend to provide and shift more risks and responsibilities to the private sector. on this project, risk allocation was key to even just getting interest from new contractors and getting reasonable pricing, right? You can shift a lot of risks to the private sector, but at some point they either might not take it anymore and might not be interested, or just price that risk so high if they don't think they can mitigate it, that we'd get pricing that really wouldn't get us to our end goal of delivering the purple line. So we knew a unique risk allocation was going to be warranted here, where we'd already done $1 billion of work. So what did we do? First, we brainstormed with the concessionaire and the owner. Hey, these are what we think the key risks moving forward will be. These are what we think the concerns, and we had kind of a preliminary risk allocation discussion and some ideas, but we needed feedback from the industry, and that started before an official process was kicked off, kind of informally. But then we asked for it. We asked for feedback in the request for qualifications. It was not just like, hey, contractor world, can you build this for us? It was, give us some feedback. What do you think? What are you worried about? What do we need to work on? And that dialogue went throughout the process that we'll talk about. So we had to be adaptable. We had to talk about things like, how do you handle defects in the existing construction work? Who's going to handle permitting, which is almost all the way finished? What about these light rail vehicles which are being built? And there were some unique one-on-one sessions with focused topics, such as, how do you navigate the data room? There was so much data on this project when we started this procurement. There was all the original data, geotechnical studies, preliminary design, and surveys from 2016, the initial procurement. But then there was all the work in design and developments and agreements that we had done over the last 4 years, as well as red line drawings and progress. Where were we with the construction? Insurance was tricky. We had to introduce the design-build contractors to the O&M contractor. Normally you come in as partners together all the way through a procurement. Here, it was like we had to introduce them to the designer, introduce the contractors to the O&M contractor and say, hey, these are your future partners. And same thing with the light rail vehicles. So we spent a little extra time and added a lot more meetings and interaction, but I think in the end, it was time well spent. And during this entire procurement process, as I alluded to earlier, we were actively mitigating risks to try to make the project more palatable, or to get industry interest. So as I mentioned, the state of Maryland was continuing design, continuing utility relocation, completing packages of work to sort of a logical stopping point, if they weren't already, by the previous contractor, continuing to build the LRVs and the O&M facility. So that really we tried to set as much of a clean slate as we could for the new contractor. But with that, we raised a new problem. How do you define the scope of a construction project that's changing every day? So that was something else we had to address during the procurement process. If we go back the other way, one more. Yep. So here's an overview of the timeline that we ended up administering. Really, we made it look like an industry standard with a request for qualifications, shortlisting, an RFP, and then a selected proposer. But we went from issuing a request for qualifications to notifying the preferred proposer in 10 months. So very proud of the work we did in a very complex situation. We attracted capable, qualified firms. We maintained competition, got competitive bids, and ultimately were able to execute the DB contract and achieve a financial restructuring to allow the project to really get started again. So we're really proud of what we did. And I think it'd be interesting if we heard the perspective of one of the contractors involved in the process. Ugo?
Thank you, Doran. Well, one of the initial challenges for the new design-build contractor was what Doran was explaining, which is the asymmetry of knowledge. The concessionaire and the owner and operator possess existing familiarity with the project. Meanwhile, us, the design-build contractor, have to quickly get up to speed on a project where other involved parties, including many subcontractors as well, already had a head start. And we need to take into account, as Doran mentioned before, that the project was changing every day. Essentially, the design-build contractor faced a compressed timeline to accumulate all this knowledge. In addition, new and unique contract and subcontract complexity faced and had to be effectively communicated to the subcontractors to transmit trust and allow closing all these subcontracts expeditiously. To illustrate the scale, we had to finalize over 80% of all necessary subcontracts within the first 4 months of the project. A key innovation of this P3 project was also its accelerated mobilization plan. Unlike traditional projects, there was no dedicated design period before establishing a significant design build team. And project facilities and project management plan had to be completed and approved in a very short amount of time after the execution of the design build contract. If we go to the next slide, we're going to be able to see a small chart that represents this different process in the design build P3 process. So as advanced, this project embraces this accelerated P3 process that means significantly less time for the design build team to ramp up compared with the standard P3. In a normal P3 project, there is a step of a commercial close, financial close, notice to proceed, and conventional construction. This time frame might last between 6 months or 1 year. Here, essentially lasts 24 hours. So it's important to mention also that owner and concessionaire created a very collaborative contract structure that not only attracted the design-build construction industry that Doran was mentioning before, but also the subcontractors necessary to build the purple line, since they are also subject to the same P3 flow down provisions. Now, even something that sounds simple, like document control, turned out to be complex in this project. Doran already mentioned before the amount of documents that the project was compiling through 5 years. So this is why document control interfaces between the design-build contractor, concessionaire, and owner were programmed to accelerate transmittal processes. And special interfaces were created to upload all the documentation from all previous 5 years in just a few weeks. If we go to the next slide, we're going to see a picture of what Doran was also advancing, and it's the work that the owner was performing in order to accelerate the project. That was done by owner performing certain key construction work. That work was done not only during, but also after the second procurement phase. This was a unique and uncharted territory for the project, where both owner and design-build contractor work concurrently on multiple fronts and communicating and coordinating simultaneously with more than 30 stakeholders. In this picture, we see owner and design-build contractor coordinating traffic patterns and detours to allow concurrent construction work in the same area. The owner, concessionaire, and design builder didn't just create a collaborative contract. We also built meeting and communication processes that really encourage open dialogue and proactive problem solving. A proof of such success is the fact that this very complex project has no disputes. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Doran, who will share a bit more about this vital partnership making this project happen.
Thanks, Hugo. So that was sort of how we emerged from the past, and now we're going to look at the present day, which is basically this period with now our new colleague Hugo and the new design builder. But before we go there, we should talk about what we've learned, right? And we didn't have the success we wanted originally, but I think we learned some really valuable lessons that, as Hugo has mentioned, have really set us up well in the present. And that's that the last P in PPP is most important, the partnership. We've got some bullets here about monthly executive meetings, but a monthly meeting itself isn't partnership. Through the reprocurement and the settlement and the challenges of the past, our executive leadership from both the private side and the state really developed a strong relationship and ways of working. So we've maintained that now. So even though we don't have big issues or big disputes and things are going well, we maintain that partnership, that communication. We have monthly executive meetings, and it's nothing for them to pick up the phone and call each other, text each other on a daily basis if needed, which hopefully it's not. That means the three of us aren't doing our job. But I think it's important that we've kept that link because we've realized how valuable it can be. One example also is a new partnering consultant. A partnering consultant will not guarantee that you have good partnership, but it was another step that we took. And I think what we realized is we have the same goal. That's to deliver the purple line and on time and on budget. And so to do that, we have to support the construction team. If they have a challenge, it's not just Ugo's problem or the construction contractor's problem. It's all of our problem because it's impacting our joint goal of delivering the purple line. So we have a real project first approach to resolving the issues and the conflicts that do come up in a pretty challenging, dense urban environment. We quickly identify them, we communicate them with each other, and we mitigate as soon as we can to keep the problem small. That was a lesson learned from the past where sometimes if you retreat to your corners, the problem sort of festers and lingers and it doesn't get better with age. So especially on these P3 projects where time is so critical, we really want to solve that problem first. And if we need to read our contracts later and figure things out, fine. But keeping the work moving and utilizing the team members with the skills best suited to do the job. We have a tremendous team, the owner and their consultants and that help us. They've been on this project for years. They've developed deep relationships. They've managed some of the work and some of these subcontractors. So we're able to work together. Who has the best relationship with whom? How can we creatively think about an alternative design? And we really try to use the entire team and not just say, well, it's the design builder or concessionaire or owner's fault. We work together. And I think that's a key lesson that we learned and we're definitely taking forward with us. So if we go to the next slide, Ray, you want to talk us about the new timeline?
There we go. Yes. So I'll pick up from where Dora left off on. We stopped around that time period of where our design builder came on, Maryland Transit Solutions, in 2022. So starting there, that contract was executed in April 2022, having Maryland Transit Solutions as our design builder contractor engaged in mobilization efforts, signing subcontracts, planning field activities, and continuing all of those inspections. So the design, build, and the construction activities really started in 2022 and carried through 2023. That was a year of progress for us, really making a lot of progress on the Purple Line, ramping up full-scale construction while maintaining a safe working environment across the alignment. Then you move into 2024, where that momentum really started to build on the project. And that led to our first light rail vehicle arriving in spring of just last year. And we completed the test track in that summer around our Glen Ridge Operations and Maintenance Facility that's on the Prince George's side, which was a huge milestone for the project to be able to bring one of the 28 vehicles down here, which now we have 8 down there, but to start to bring that vehicle down. And then if you shift into 2025, that began this transformation of the Purple Line, which you can see across the alignment if you take a look at what's happening from across the 16 miles. The project really has started to come up above the ground, seeing the tracks and the overhead catenary system, and the stations really taking shape. All the stations are under construction. And then that led to us really moving into testing, which we just started a little bit over a month ago. And that was a huge milestone for us to start LRV dynamic testing of our first light rail vehicle at our operation and maintenance facility. And then that will kick off us to moving into completing all the track installation in the summer of 2026. And then in the spring of that spring to start the end-to-end system testing, and then leading us to opening for revenue service in late 2027. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ugo to give some more details about where we are presently with the project and to give some construction updates.
Well, we had to have one. You're still on mute, Ugo. Every meeting has to have one. So
It was my turn. So thank you, Ray. So as Ray advanced, the project is advancing expeditiously, and today we are happy to say that it's more than 76% completed. More than 80,000 linear feet of track is already installed, and we are actively working in all 21 stations. Actually, 14 station canopies are already installed, and we recently started the dynamic testing of the trains that Ray mentioned before. Operation maintenance facilities are completed and is already storing 8 purple line vehicles. Some significant achievements were the work complete at the University of Maryland. We're going to expand a bit more later, and the opening of Talbot Avenue Bridge in 2024. But as was mentioned, probably the most exciting recent development has been the start of the testing of our light rail vehicles. This is a big step, so let's try to watch the following video to see it in action.
This time we have permission to proceed.
Proceeding track 1 westbound.
All right, so you've heard a little bit about the past and the present. So now let's move into the future, the next steps of the Purple Line. But before we jump to that, we're going to talk a little bit similar to what we did earlier about some lessons learned and some focus areas on the project. So jumping into that, the Purple Line is a complex project, as you probably has picked up on, and we've had to really become very creative and innovative with the construction phasing, whether that's working with all our different partners to do things a little faster, do some closures, move things around so that we can make sure that we're maintaining our schedule and hitting our milestones that we've been hitting over the last 2 years. And just wanted to throw it over to Ugo to talk a little bit about some of the construction phasings that we've done across the project that have really helped us to move along.
Yeah. So actually, we have more than 50 intersections, and we have worked very closely with the state, with the owner, with the concessionaire, and also with Montgomery County and Prince George County to modify more than 50 phases in these intersections. This innovative construction approach has been key in accelerating construction while at the same time carefully minimizing impacts on traffic and community life.
I appreciate that, Ugo. Another area is the lessons learned on the transit-oriented development. So, I mean, part of the project, when you're building a new light rail project, you want to spur transit-oriented development, and it's definitely happening along the Purple Line, in particular where we intersect with the WMATA system at New Carrollton, College Park, Silver Spring, and then Bethesda. But also in between all 4 of those stations, we're seeing a lot of developments happen. But that does present some challenges where we have to work with them and make sure that we're maintaining our schedule while they're also hitting their schedule. So making sure all parties involved are moving forward. Another sense of partnership that is happening with all the other businesses and construction that's happening along the Purple Line corridor. I don't know, Dora, if you want to talk a little bit about some of the transit-oriented development coordination.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's fantastic to see the economic growth and the area continue to develop, but that is a challenge. And we have a high-rise building being built, right next to one of our stations. And so if we're blasting through rock downward while they're pouring concrete above, how does that interact? So I think to Ray's point, it's just been a lot of, and you could call this third-party coordination as well, but it's just a lot of coordination amongst all the partners on the project, and then the communities and the developments and the third parties that we touch.
I appreciate that, Doran. Doran's hit a couple of these with the third-party coordination and community engagement. Just to expand on the community engagement, we're right now in our CAT season for spring 2025, and have had 2 CAT meetings already. So we have CAT meetings, or community advisory team meetings, that we have across 7 different areas that we engage with the community, hear their questions, and really make sure that we are hearing them, and as we are building the Purple Line and minimizing as much impact as possible, and making sure they're getting the updates and seeing the transformation taking shape across the alignment. One other area that we are really focused on is the systems testing. And Ugo has talked a little bit about that, but I don't know if you wanted to add a little bit more, Ugo, on the systems testing.
Yeah, that's right. From now on, the project will focus more and more on testing the Purple Line system. So testing will continue until actually the completion of the project, until 2027. And this is how we guarantee the safety and readiness of the Purple Line before opening to the public. In order to do so, owner, concessionaire, contractor, and now especially the operator are working closely to take all the necessary steps.
I appreciate that, Ugo. So I'll turn it over to you to talk about at a high level of what the timeline is.
Go ahead, Ugo. Do you want to take us forward for some highlights?
Yeah, this is a reminder of the timeline. We plan for the Purple Line to open for the public in about 2.5 years, that brings us to the end of 2027. In the next slides, we are going to go a bit through the current construction. We'll try to do that expeditiously so we can have time for some questions. Here is a graphic and overview of the WMATA Metro Bethesda South entrance. The Purple Line is building the shaft and cavern that will transport transit riders from the street level to the Purple Line station, providing access to the Red Line Metro, which heads either to DC or the outer mainland suburbs. This work includes a vertical shaft, cavern, elevators, and utilities. We recently completed the cavern arch, as we can see now in the picture, and started the bench blasting and its excavation. Then we will progress with waterproofing the mezzanine level, building the lobby, the slab. If we go to the next slide, we're going to see also the Bethesda station that will connect to the south entrance that we saw before. Located in the heart of this thriving Bethesda community, the western end of the Purple Line begins here. This is the Purple Line station that, as I said before, will connect with the Metro Rail's rail line. The construction is advanced, and platforms and elevators, for example, have already been installed. If we go to the next slide, we're going to be able to see the Connecticut Avenue station that now starts looking like the rendering. The pedestrian bridge on the left has already been installed, and the stairs and elevator tower you can see on the right already taking shape. Silver Spring Transit Center mezzanine will provide Purple Line riders access to another WMATA Metro Red Line stop, and also Metrobus and Montgomery County ride-on bus services. Purple Line Station is accessible by stairs, elevator, and a convenient kiss and ride loop that we can see on the right of the picture. All of this work is possible thanks to close coordination with WMATA team. If we go to the next slide, we can see that the Purple Line has successfully completed work at the center campus of UMD. This has been a very important milestone for us and for the team. Purple Line has been coordinating successfully with University of Maryland to construct and complete this section at the center of the campus in summer to reduce impacts to the students and to UMD community. That also allowed the completion of that work that you see in the screen 1 year ahead of schedule. In the picture on the right, you can see Campus Drive Station and its art in transit. The glass colors that you see changes along the day, displaying the colors of Maryland flag and also the Purple Line. This picture in the left shows the OMF building, the Operation and Maintenance Facility. It's silver certified, and this building houses the Purple Line Control Center and is the facility where the 28 Purple Line trains will be maintained. On the right side, we can see a picture of the first LRV testing that we introduced with the previous video. And as I said before, this is a major step forward for the Purple Line. Testing is an important phase. It guarantees the safe for the Purple Line and that is ready for everybody to use.
I appreciate that, Ugo. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. Just wanted to summarize a little bit. You heard me say 3 key words throughout the presentation. In 2023, we really focused on the progress and that we were making on the project through all our partners working together. And then that momentum really kicked in 2024 with that first LRV coming, and then also completing the test track. And then in 2024, we started the testing of the first. Sorry, I've messed up my dates. Moving too fast. In 2024, we got the first LRV that arrived, and then just this year we started the testing of our first light rail vehicle just over a month ago. Really focused on how our partners have worked together to get us to this point, as Ugo mentioned earlier, being 76.1% complete as of today. I want to encourage you to follow us at purplelinmd.com or go to our website or to check out our new spring progress video that we just put up this week that really shows that transformation and shows that progress over the last year or two, and the transformation has taken shape across the alignment for the Purple Line. With that, we turn it over for questions. Thank you, Mike.
Well, thanks very much, everyone, for the presentation about the past, sort of the current and the future of the Purple Line. If there are any questions, you can post those into the chat. One sort of broad question that's already been posed is there any plan? I mean, any plans in the future to sort of expand the Purple Line to create, if you will, a ring around the entire metro area?
I guess I can take that question. I'll say our focus is to open up the Purple Line now that we're building. And then the state is looking at different things to make sure we have transit across the entire state. Because the ring, goes into Virginia too. So it's a lot of coordination that would have to happen there.
Sure. Thanks, Ray. Another question that's been posed. Maybe if you could think about the lessons that we'll learn related to the contractor substitution, bringing on the new Design-Build Contractor, and what led to, I guess, the departure of the first Design-Build Contractor.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just kind of briefly, we don't really want to dwell on it, but I think issue resolution, as I mentioned, is a lesson learned. If one partner is having a problem, we all have a problem. And if you know, we have to talk about it and try to resolve it as quick as we can. And that was something that maybe all parties should have done a better job of in the first go around. And so when we were looking for a new contractor, we were really thinking about a long-term partner and a team that we could work with and work together as a team for the next few years to get through all the complexities. You can't write some of this stuff down in a contract. You have to solve it as it comes. And I think, I'm proud of the work we've done, and I hope we continue to do as a team to address any challenges that do come up.
Okay. Thanks, Thornton. Another question is related sort of metrics to make sure that you're staying on track, to open for service in 2027. So what sort of things are you monitoring, I guess, as your metrics to make sure you're going to be able to meet your target of opening in 2027?
I guess I could start out and then I'll throw it to Ugo. I'll just say one word: systems, then go to Ugo, tracks and systems. But Ugo, if you want to jump in.
So everything starts with construction phases, right? The things that we have been tracking, essentially, it's all of these detours, MOT phases, when they need to happen, and what we can do to expedite them, and what we can do to minimizing the impacts. That allow us to get into the next phase, which is installing track. So we measure also the linear feet of track that we're installing every month. And the next step is to be able to put vehicles and the train control system on the tracks, which is the testing that Ray was mentioning before. So what we have is a detailed plan about the testing process that we need from now to the end of the project. And that's what we are also monitoring. That starts with this achievement that we showed the video before, which is the LRV testing.
So during the presentation, thanks, Hugo, for that explanation. During the presentation, you guys emphasized, the third-party coordination that you've had to do throughout the project. Could you maybe speak a little bit more about, maybe some of the third parties that you've had to interact with a little bit, maybe more specifically, and, how did you deal with, I'm sure there were some occasions where there was some conflict. How did you deal with that conflict? Or maybe, one perspective differing from another perspective?
I would start. Oh,
You want to go ahead, Ugo? You can start.
okay. I would say together. Let me explain what I mean together. To coordinate all the work that we previously explained, we need coordination not only with Montgomery County, Prince George County, also with Right On, also with Montgomery County Public Schools, also, for example, with the cities, and with the communities that we're impacting. And we do that meeting with each third party individually and also in group, and also at every level. That involves the design-build contractor, involves also the owner, involves the concessionaire, and everybody has been working with every stakeholder to be able to meet the expectations, together and independently.
And I'll jump in just to expand on it a little bit. So there are a lot of third parties involved on the Purple Line. So you heard WMATA, that's sort of a third party for us. Now, if we've gotten that cleared up, I saw a question in there. So glad we were able to clear that up. It's a Maryland Transit Administration project where we work with WMATA because we intersect with them. But then we also have SHA because most of our right-of-way is SHA owned, which is another mode of the MDOT. We have all our utility companies that we have to work with. Ugo mentioned Montgomery County. We also have Prince George's County. And then we have CSX because we're right along the CSX corridor too in some different areas. And all of that, as you probably have heard through the presentation and what Ugo and Doran has been saying, is that partnership and that communication piece of really working together as early as possible to navigate, because there are going to be issues and different things that pop up, but navigating it to make sure that we resolve them early to mitigate and do that has been key to getting us to where we are on the project today.
Thanks, Hugo and Ray. Appreciate that. I'm looking through the chat, and I think we've hit most of the questions. There's a comment which I think is worth, maybe just sort of highlighting is, documenting sort of the lessons learned. I mean, so it's one thing to talk about them in this kind of setting. I mean, is there a plan to maybe document the lessons learned, from this project? I mean, I know that's something that, PennDOT did recently with their MVP3 project that they did. So, lessons learned document they put out. Is that something you guys have given any thought to?
I can start and then I'll throw it over the door. And I would say yes. One is part of what we have to do as part of the Federal Transit Administration grant that we have to do, but also just because of the complexity and the history of the project, as you've seen, there's a lot to be learned here. So we've been documenting different things that can help the industry, given it's only been, correct me if I'm wrong, Doran, this is only the second P3 project, light rail project in America. So yes, it's a simple answer from my side. Now, how does that look? That's where more conversation has to happen, but I'll throw it over the door and to see what the concessionaire may have had.
No, I mean, I think clearly internally as industry, we've taken our lessons learned and shared them within our companies, but we try to do things like this. We were at the Design-Build Institute giving a presentation, trying to share as much as we can with the industry. We're open with that. I imagine there's some academics on here who may want to do a case study or, otherwise study it. So that may be another way, but I think we're open to all methods, and we feel like we want everyone to learn and not reinvent the wheel for sure.
So there's one final question, and then we'll wrap things up. Is I guess it's related to service frequency. Is there any plans in the future, I guess, to reduce the headway between the trains from, I guess at peak hours, from 7.5 minutes to something less than that, or 7.5 minutes, sort of a system constraint?
I'll say the plan is to try to hit the 7.5 minutes during the peak hours for the system, and we're working towards that. So once we do all the system sets and operations, the plan is that. Then in the future, I'll say with the concessionaire and Purple Line Transit operators, they have to look into that to see if there's room for any improvements in the efficiency there during the peak hours. I did see one other question I wanted to just mention. We are opening the entire system at one time, not in phases.
All right. Well, great. So again, I want to thank everyone who joined us here today. We were happy to put on this webinar. I want to thank Ray, Ugo, and Doran for their time. It's unique to have the three parties that are part of a P3 present in a forum like this. So really appreciate you guys' time today. And for those, just want to mention within a few days, this recording will be posted on the Build America website. So if there's something that the Build America Center's website, so if there's something that you want to come back and revisit, that recording will be up